This conference will now be recorded.
So tonight, because they're short chapters, we're going to do two of them this week. Okay, chapters 10 and chapters 11. If you take a look at page I should have had it open. Sorry, there it is. Page 113. This chapter is all about understanding the pain and the potential of intimacy needs. And we've already talked about needs in the past in chapter 2, as you recall, and how important they were. And we even, from page 117, we talked about the potential and the pain of having those needs met versus unmet, and how that can cause damage in people. And so what you're going to do is not look back at chapter 2. When you do this exercise on page 118, you're going to redo that exercise again where you pick the three most important ones on the left-hand side for you to receive. And on the right-hand side, you're going to guess what are the three most important ones that you think your partner likes to receive, okay? Everybody got it?
Mm-hmm.
Good. Then the thing I like about this chapter is page 118, page 119, page 120, is all of these questions that you are asked. And the important part, well, it's a two-part importance to these questions. First of all, that you answer them as best you can and as complete as you can and as honest as you can, because when you sit down for the marriage staff meeting, your partner is going to learn some new things out about you, and that is extremely important, okay? So that's this chapter, and it's like I said, it's a very short chapter, but really a very important one, because you're going to be learning some things about each other. Then on page 122 through 124, remember every week we've been focusing on certain things. So tonight, before you go to bed, you're going to read page 122 through 124. And the two things that you're going to be focusing on for this whole week until we meet next week is affirmation on page 122 and 3, and focus on security on page 123 and 24. And they've got, again, when you see and read these areas, you're going to see practical suggestions. And I love these practical suggestions. Try to incorporate them in what you're doing during the week, okay? Focus on affirmation, focus on security. Then, let's see, is there anything on page, let's see. Yeah, on page 124, when you focus on security, one of the things, the suggestions, practical suggestions they have, I just have to briefly tell you about this because it was so funny. 30-second phone calls. I accidentally misdialed and got Carla on my phone one time. And I suddenly realized when she answered the phone that it was her. And so I said, "Hi, honey, I just called to tell you I love you." And she says, "What do you want?" And I said, "Nothing. I just called to tell you I love you." She said, "You don't ever call like that and tell me you love me." I said, "Well, tell you what, as of today, I'm going to be doing it more often." So it was an accident, but it surprised her, and it overjoyed her that I did that. And it doesn't take long, 30 seconds to just say, "Hi, I love you," and what you're doing, and, share with your partner what you're doing, just to just to be in touch and just to let each other know you love each other, okay? Then on page 126 is chapter 11. And chapter 11 is entitled, Leave Your Father and Mother. Now, you guys have already left your father and mother physically, okay? But that's not what this chapter is about. It's emotionally and spiritually leaving your father and mother. For example, many years ago, one of the first classes I ever taught, it was at the church, and there was a couple there, and they'd been married for 15 years. And when it got to this chapter, and I explained the chapter, she looked her face was kind of funny, like she wasn't too happy. And so when they came back the following week, I asked them if they did the chapter, and she said, no, I couldn't do it. So I said, well, can we talk about that? And we stepped aside and we talked about it. And she was very honest and open with me and said, the reason I couldn't do this chapter was because I was sexually abused by my father in my early teens. And my husband of 15 years does not even know that. I've never told him. So she was still stuck in the pain of that event or those events that were happening in her life, and she couldn't. When you are stuck in pain like that about things from the past, you can't move forwards too well because it's constantly eating away at you, and it's affecting it's affecting your present situation. It's affecting your marriage. It's affecting your future. And so this chapter is all about leaving emotionally your father and mother. And on page 129 through 131, there is again a list of emotions or needs. And what you're supposed to do on this list is the instructions are on page 129 at the bottom. It says, read each definition carefully and then identify the needs you received from each biological parent. And complete the exercise twice if you had other significant caregivers bringing you up. Okay? So what you're supposed to do is, for the first one there, number one, acceptance, is read the definition, and then in the margin, if you received acceptance from your mother growing up, you're going to write mom. Okay? If you received acceptance from your father growing up, you're going to write dad. And if you did not receive acceptance from either one of them, you're going to mark a 0. And then when you sit down and have your marriage staff meeting and you share these things with your partner, it's going to be hopefully very revealing. For example, one of the reasons why I like this chapter in particular is because on page 130, number 18 is intimacy, deep sharing and communion with another. When Carla and I did this exercise the first time around 20 some years ago, we both marked a 0 in the margin. Neither one of us had deep sharing or communion with either one of our parents. And so when we shared this with each other, when we did our marriage staff meeting, we looked at each other and we said, kind of simultaneously, no wonder we don't know how to be intimate. And I'm not talking about sexual intimacy. I'm talking about friendship. I'm talking about communion. I'm talking about sharing with one another and being honest, open, and vulnerable. Okay? We didn't know how to do it. But because we said, and you know, the shame of it is that we're both fairly intelligent, and we didn't realize this for the first 20 years of our marriage. It was pretty obvious, but I'm going to tell you, the biggest problem in that first 20 years of our marriage was the following. She was constantly looking at the negative things that I was doing, and I was constantly looking at the negative things that she was doing. Of course, all of the things that I was doing, all the negative things that I was doing, was a lot more than what she was doing. I mean, I was the biggest problem in our marriage, without a doubt. I mean, I literally treated my wife like dirt, and I'm not proud of it, but it's something that we went through. And I think if we hadn't have gone through it, we wouldn't be doing marriage classes like we are today, because we learned a lot. And how we learned how not to be married. Okay, and the past 22 years, we've learned how to be married. So it's been quite a journey. But no, learning some of these things about each other are very, very important. And then there is on page 134 and 135 and 136 a little exercise, and that's creating a genogram of your family. Now, a genogram is basically, if you take a look at the page 134, a genogram is the marriage of Dave and Donna. Okay, Dave is a square. All males are square. All females are circles. So Dave and Donna, and then below their little chart there's a key. So there's a dotted line between Dave and Donna, and if you look down there, it shows that Dave and Donna are distant. Okay, there's other lines there in the chart: marriage or separation. There's divorce. They're estranged. There's conflict, etc., etc. There's you know how to read a key, but this shows how the family gets along and what is the relationship of each one of them to each other. And so what you do is on page 135, it says, wives, draw your genogram for your family of origin here. So you do that over there. And of course, it shows only a square. The big square is for the guys, and the big round circle is for the gals, and the smaller circle and square above you, that's their parents. Now, you might have siblings, you might have children coming off of that and everything, and so you create your diagram first, and then what is the relationship? Are there any kind of uh, things going on there? Are there marriages, separations, divorce, estranged, conflicts, etc.? So that's for the ladies on page 135, and then on page 136 is the genogram that the husband or the guys will draw their chart there. And it's just kind of a fun little thing to do. And then when you sit down and have your marriage staff meeting, you talk about it, and you perhaps will learn new things about one another. I know Carla and I did. Again, because we didn't talk much for 20 years. So when we're suddenly sitting down and doing this class, and we're talking about her parents and my parents, and we're learning a lot about how she grew up, how I grew up, and the relationship of my sister. Here's a crazy one, for example. My sister, which I didn't know until about 10 years ago. She's, I think, 2 years older than I am. But she was sexually abused when she was a child also, and I didn't know that, like I said, until about 10 years ago. But doing this chapter and talking about it with my sister, I found out. So then on page 138, 139, 140, 141, you have again focus on two things. So again, for chapter 10, you're going to read tonight those two focus areas, and tonight you're going to also read page 138 through 141, and you're going to learn about leadership, better understanding this need, and you're going to see the practical suggestions. And then on page 140, you're going to learn about focusing on happiness and better understanding this need and some practical suggestions there. So you got, it's not a whole lot. And I think you'll find it's relatively easy, and try to do the best you can. If you've got things that have hurt you in the past, going back to what I want to say, going back to that lady who was molested by her father, who was taking our class, and she didn't tell her husband for 15 years. One of the things that I said to her was, I think your husband would like to know that. I think your husband would like to know the pain that you have had your whole marriage because of that. I don't think he's going to look down at you. I don't think he's going to judge you. I think he's going to feel sad that he wasn't there to help you out through these sad situations. And guess what? She did it. And it was, they're still married today and very happily married, and they talk a lot more than they ever did before. And she opened up and shared with him. And so it's very important to, you need to rely upon each other. You need to share your lives with one another. You need to be there for one another. You need to have a shoulder to cry on when you need it. Okay? So don't hesitate to share things that were maybe perhaps a little negative when you were growing up. Okay? So, short one. That was fairly short tonight, but again, 2 chapters. You can do it. Any questions? Any thoughts? Nobody says no. Just shake your head no.
Sounds
No questions, no thoughts.
good.
Okay. Well, that's all there is to it. Enjoy your rest of your evening, and if you run into any kind of problems ever, don't forget, call me, text me, whatever you want, email me, get in touch with me. Don't try to work your way through it without some help. Okay? Good
Thank you.
night.
Good
Have a
night.
good one. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay.